And so I know you've got 3 tips to share with us
Yes.
today, and so let's work on the first tip, which I believe is about your audience, kind of
Yes.
a way of thinking about your audience. So let's talk about that. First
Great.
tip.
Well, the first tip, very simply, is to remember who it's about. Remember who your presentation is about. And I'll give you a hint. If you're the speaker, it's not you.
Really?
Yes. It's easy to think as the speaker, because everybody's watching you and the spotlight's on you and you have the microphone and all the rest, that you are the most important person in the room. In fact, I believe that as the speaker, you are the least important person in the room. The most important people in the room are the audience members. They're the folks who gave up their time when they could have been doing something else to come hear what you had to say. They're the ones who've been promised information that they need to receive. So if you can change your focus away from thinking about yourself and if your shirt's tucked in right and how your accent sounds and all, what if you fail and all that, think about your audience. Think about your job as the messenger, the person who's delivering the information that they came to get. And think about how best you can serve them in that way, how best you can deliver that information, how you can make the experience enjoyable for them, basically how to serve them during your presentation time. If you do that, you will shift the focus away from worrying about yourself and all the little odds and ends that get you stressed, and you will shift the focus toward the audience and the people you're serving. And if you do that and you serve them well, they don't care about the rest. They're going to love you.
So they seem to be focused on you, but part of your job is to focus back on them.
Yes.
And you're saying that by doing that, you help harness this fight or flight response.
Exactly right. Part of it is just simply re-engaging your brain in an activity that's productive, right? Getting yourself away from thinking about fear of harm,
About running out of the room.
Right, away from thinking about the fact that everybody's staring at you and thinking about, okay, here's a situation. How can I be of service to my audience? What can I tell them and how can I tell it to them that's most valuable for them? What kind of experience can I create around it that's fun and entertaining and memorable so they have a good time? If I do those things, I shift my focus away from myself and they will be thrilled with my performance and that'll make me feel better.
Very interesting. Great. Okay, that's a great that's a great tip. Thank you. And so the next tip I know has to do with a trick that your brain plays on you as well. Like there's another trick that your brain tends to play on you, and you have a tip for kind of overcoming that. So.
I do, and this one relates to the idea of visualization, which is something we all do many times during the day, anytime that we imagine a scenario that doesn't really exist. And this happens all the time in public speaking, right? Somebody says, hey, Andy, we're going to give you an assignment. You have to give a 15-minute presentation on this product to our prospects. And instantly, your mind goes not only to a bad scenario, but the worst possible thing that could happen, right? Your mind says, oh my God, I'm going to get in front of them, my PowerPoint's going to break down, my computer will catch on fire, my pants will fall down, the sprinklers go off in the room, and I'll never be able to show my face in this town again. That's visualization, right? You go to the most extreme negative response. Well, the idea is that if you catch yourself doing that, to try to stop it as it's happening and turn it around and change it to a visualization that's extreme on the positive side. So instead of imagining everything going wrong, imagine everything going right. And that might mean different things to different people. First of all, you can imagine that you are enjoying the speaking experience, and I'll reassure you it is possible to enjoy giving a presentation. So imagine having fun with it as the speaker. Imagine that something you dread could actually be enjoyable. You could have a good time. It could feel empowering and invigorating to give a good presentation and know that you are serving your audience. Imagine your audience applauding you at the end, not just the polite applause, not just the golf claps, but the real, deep, thankful applause of a job well done. Imagine people coming up and shaking your hand afterwards and thanking you for one particular insight that changed their mind on the topic. Imagine your boss coming up with this sort of mixture of astonishment and awe and saying, I just didn't know you had it in you. We have 10 more opportunities for you to share this message. Can you do that for us? And you know that you have changed your importance in that company immeasurably in just a few minutes. Imagine all of those outcomes, whatever relates to your specific situation. And the mind is a funny thing. Whatever you imagine is more likely to happen. So if you visualize those positive outcomes, you're training your mind and your body to go in that direction. And you're more likely to actually create that positive outcome in real life.
Interesting. No, I know that when I was working in computers that we used to do presentations for, what the software looked like.
Yeah.
And I do remember a specific case where I took a big risk and we acted out, instead of doing the PowerPoint thing, we acted out the call coming in and all the different things that happened. And it went immediately up the corporation, like everybody, like, you need to do this again and again and again. And it was really interesting how powerful that was as a process to watch people say, yes, you need to show this to everyone.
So not only did you do something that most people wouldn't want to do and wouldn't do very well, but you did it in a way that was not only effective, it was fun, it was entertaining. I mean, that's a whole new level of accomplishment. Most people don't even aim for that.
Imagine that, yeah.
I mean,
well, the thing was, I didn't know at the time, I wouldn't even have known to visualize that, right? I think those are very helpful tips for people, like what does a successful presentation look like? Applause, people coming up to you afterwards and putting up the management chain. I think those are great things to kind of put in your brain instead of pants catching fire and running from the room.
And you can do that proactively too. You don't have to wait for a negative image to come into your head. I have told people, and I've done this myself, that when you have an important presentation coming up, spend 10, 15 minutes in the morning or in the evening, whenever it's convenient for you, just sitting quietly in a room, close your eyes, and just play out that positive visualization. Imagine it happening in the most detail that you can conjure up for the situation that you're going to. The people who will be there, the stage that you'll be on, the content you're giving. Make it as detailed as possible, and imagine all of the outcomes that you'd like to see. Well, who would you like to come up to you afterwards, specifically, and what words would you like to come out of their mouth? And imagine it happening.
And so you're suggesting this as kind of practice, in addition to practicing your content and your delivery and all that kind of stuff, you're suggesting that part of the practice regimen is to sit down and visualize about all the good things happening.
Yes, and I'm a big fan of actual physical practice, and there's really no substitute for that. It's incredibly valuable to practice as much as you can in any situation you can. But the brain doesn't always know the difference between actual practice and imagined practice.
Okay.
So if you're able, what you're doing in visualization is essentially practicing just in your mind without your body moving. And that can be just as powerful to your brain in terms of programming you to create that outcome as physically going through the motions.
Interesting. Okay. Great. That's a great tip. Thank you.
Sure.
So let's move on. I know you have one. So we've talked about two tips. The first is to focus on your audience, to make it more about the audience than about you, and that helps master the fight or flight response.
Yes.
The second is this great idea about practicing. I had never thought about adding that to the practice regimen, but it's a great idea to kind of practice, to visualize good things happening as part of preparing for the presentation. And the third one, it's an embarrassingly simple tip, but I know that you like to give it anyway. So
I always hesitate to do this one because I think that somebody out there will throw tomatoes at me and say, well, of course, that's too obvious. And yet, as a coach and a trainer, as someone who speaks all the time and watches other people speak all the time, I am absolutely blown away at how little this happens and how few times I see this proactively exercised by speakers, either when they're on stage or in some area right before they go on stage. And that's simply this: smile. Hey, perfect. You're really good at this. That's the great thing about smiling, as a matter of fact. We have an unlimited number of smiles. The more we smile, the better we get at smiling, the more likely we are to smile in the future. It sounds silly, it sounds basic, but you would be amazed at how little you do it unless you sort of make a little mental gesture, unless you remember to do it.
Well, and so you've talked about being up on stage, and this fight or flight thing kicks in, and we're looking at mastering this a little bit. And so at this time, all the stuff is running through your body. You're saying, okay, you just have to remember to smile. So do you have any tips for how to keep that in mind, or any ideas for how to remember to smile when you get up there? Because I do watch a lot of presentations, and most people do not smile.
They don't. And smiling has incredible value in pretty much any situation where you're nervous, whether you're actually going on stage or whether you're thinking about going on stage, or even when you're visualizing going on stage. There are very few things you can ever do in your life that change your mood as quickly from the outside in as smiling, right? You change your facial expression and your body adapts itself to support that expression. Instantly, your shoulders drop, your breath slows down, you calm down, you send more blood to the prefrontal cortex in your brain, which controls memory and emotion and analysis, so you're able to remember things better, think things through better. You don't freak out as much as you might otherwise. You feel more confident. All of these things come from smiling, and you don't need to buy it, you don't need to rent it, there's no monthly fee, you've got them built in, you just do it.
Well, so how do you suggest remembering to smile when you get into this fight or flight kind of mode?
Any way you possibly can. If you got to tie a little piece of string around your finger, go for it. And I've also tried other things, and I've seen things done that are very, very simple ways to remind yourself. For example, Maybe you know someone who's going to be in the audience, and you can simply have them hold up a piece of paper that says the word smile or has a picture of a smile on it. You can ask a stagehand who's ushering you on stage to remind you, or someone in the crew. If you're using any sort of paper notes or you have a podium, you can write the word smile on the notes. You can place it on the podium. You can put it on the stage. You can hang it from the rafters. It doesn't matter. Any way you can get that message to yourself, as long as you receive it, you'll find it incredibly valuable.
Great. And so you recommend smiling before you even start. Like just go out there and start a smile and
Yes.
take it from there.
In fact, my personal habit, whenever I give a presentation, I do this a lot on behalf of other companies, is before I open my mouth, before I say welcome and hello and I introduce myself and I move on, the very first thing I do is smile. And I make that note to myself to do it every single time at the beginning of every single presentation.
Excellent. So, those are great tips. So the next thing I want to cover is when you think about somebody who's out there in our audience, and it's like, okay, I want to learn this skill that nobody else wants to do, and I'm gonna knock it out of the park.
Yeah.
What's a good place to start? Kind of where can you start doing this sort of speaking thing? How can you get better at this?
That's a great question. I want to make sure I give people some practical tips. So I have 3 suggestions for ways all around you that you can get started for little or no money that you would find easy and you might even find fun.
Okay.
The first, as I said, is that not only is visualization valuable as practice, but practice is valuable as practice too. So practice. All of us we come into contact with various groups every day. We might work with a team at work. We might sit down to a family dinner every night. We might hang out with friends. All of those are practice opportunities. Stand up every day, one time, let's say at each one of those, once with your friends, once with your family, once with your coworkers, for 10 seconds. And just give a quick toast, or say a quick thank you, or introduce yourself. Go through the exercise of being used to standing up and speaking, and use every one of those as practice opportunities. So much of this is simply about building confidence, which comes from the experience of doing it and feeling like you won't fall on your head when you do it.
Okay.
So that's tip number 1.
Yep.
Second is go out and watch people who you admire. There are so many great speakers out there in the landscape from all walks of life. They might be singers or actors or entertainers. They might be politicians. They might be radio or TV hosts. I personally love to watch the videos from the TED Conference, which is an annual conference in the Silicon Valley area, where the smartest people in the world get on stage for about 15 minutes at a time and talk about the most incredible things you've ever heard in a language that anybody could understand. And they're fascinating to me because their topics are as complex as they get, and yet they have simplified them to the point where they can explain them to anyone in 15 minutes just using common everyday language.
Gotcha.
And they're so good at it. So when I want to be inspired, those are the folks that I watch.
Okay.
And so that's another thing. Go to YouTube if you want. Just find people who you admire, watch them speak, and learn from them. Take from them the traits that you think resonate with you.
Okay.
And then the third idea is to go out and find other opportunities to build skills more professionally. So the first 2 suggestions are about doing things on your own, kind of casually.
Yep.
If that's not enough, if you really want to learn, find a way to do it. Almost any town, certainly Boston included, has adult education centers, has community colleges. Most of them run their own public speaking classes. Toastmasters is an organization that has chapters in almost every city in the country. Dale Carnegie is another class you can take. All of these are either free or reasonably inexpensive. So go take a class, be around other people who are learning, learn from them, have them learn from you, make it a fun group experience. It doesn't have to be tedious. It can really be an enjoyable process.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for being on the show today. Appreciate all the information that you've shared. And thank you all for joining us. This is Andrew Winnig for Kim Bissett on Picking Up the Pieces. And thank you for being here with us.